Hey everyone, it's Adrienne here from the Mindheart-Space Academy, and I'm popping on today to finish a video series that I've been sharing for a couple of months now. And I was just looking at the last entry, which was chapter 4. I had created an introduction, and then there were 4 additional chapters, and they're all on my YouTube channel on a playlist called Building the Bridge. So if you missed any of those or you want to catch up, you can go to my Mindheart-Space Academy YouTube and watch the previous videos. So this is chapter 5 and the conclusion for now, the last installment of this video series, where I've been sharing about what we're being asked to, or what's being asked of us at this moment, at this point in human evolution. And I titled the series Building the Bridge. And so that is the image that has been coming. And today I'm going to weave all of the previous threads together and bring them all together in this last video. And I'm shifting the name to Becoming the Bridge. And you'll see why in just a moment. And it's directly related to a new paradigm in leadership. And I hate to use the word paradigm because it itself has associations and certain historical limitations. So I use the word paradigm lightly in this case, but it's a new way of holding leadership and orientating to what that actually means as someone who is interested in bringing their gifts, their talents, and services to creating the new earth, a viable relationship with nature and with money, or a value system that we have that's in alignment with health, vitality, health in the climate, the ecology of the planet, because it's directly related to our health. Because we are the earth, our bodies are made out of minerals directly from the earth. And when our spirit or soul leaves our body, it will return to the earth. We are the earth. And so it's so important, and we are the waters of this planet as well. Each of us is created in water. It's our first home, is a water world. And it isn't until 9 months later that we come into our second world, which is the world of air, where we actually use our lungs for the very first time. And this is analysis, not analysis, excuse me, correlates to what's being asked for us in this next phase. So we had water, we had air, and now we're going to earth in regards to coming back to the body that has so often been rejected through religion and a number of other things. And this is where the somatic work that I do comes into play, because all of these concepts, these new age or spiritual concepts, will not actually land in our day-to-day reality until they're embodied. And so that's what I wanted to talk with you about today. And really, what it is it's a reconciliation of the matrix, and not in the way that perhaps many people think when they hear that word. Um, 25 years ago, just about this time, I was on my way to Scotland to work on my thesis, my master's thesis. I was doing a master's in critical theory, and my thesis was about this embodied matrix. And I hadn't found the words yet because I had a certain limited vocabulary, one that was um, limited to an academic domain. And throughout my life, that has expanded and transformed. What I intuitively knew, what was moving through me, which I was trying to communicate through a language that didn't really allow for it at the degree in which the power was contained in it. Because at the end of the day, it's not a conceptual experience that I'm talking about. It's the weaving of the field consciously and intentionally. And if that doesn't make sense, I'm going to share a little bit more in just a moment that I hope helps expand on this idea when I talk about building the bridge and becoming the bridge and what exactly that means. So for highly sensitive people, empaths, intuitives, people that are attuned with energy, and in fact, that as myself might be my primary way of operating, although it was invalidated, it was excluded, there was no language for it. It was often closed down. The people around me weren't necessarily able to mirror it back. And so it was isolating in that way to have a level of experience that could not be expressed. And so there are experiences, we've all had them, that ordinary words cannot contain. Moments that seem to be more than human, they're transhuman or transpersonal, and dare I say, even supernatural, because the realm of our soul extends beyond this material lattice of what we see, and it always has. And ideally, that was the role religion was to play. The original impulse was to give a form to the ineffable, that which cannot be named, as a gesture to give voice to the unspeakable or the uncontainable beyond the mind's capacity to reason. And because in many ways, many religions had been appropriated by reason through the mind, and then morphed, the authoritative knowing morphed from the church into science. And it's not discounting any of these fields or domains of knowledge production. It's not what I'm here to share. What I'm here to share is that those fields are limited. The ineffable realm is the central axis of creation. It is what holds all potential and all possibility. And in harmonic terms, this is the field of creation, the space where polarity collapses into form. And this is why the name of God historically has been carried as being quote unquote unspeakable. And sometimes people have said it's prohibited, like no one is allowed to say it. But the truth is, it's the essence of everything cannot be contained in language, the language of matter. It is this very resonance in which form I should say, the ineffable, or God, is the very resonance in which form arises and dissolves. It rises up out of the ocean of consciousness, and then it recedes back into it. And it looks as it disappears from this realm of the physical world. But we have a very limited scope of vision, as I believe I've seen that the human eye, for example, only perceives 1% of the spectrum of light. That means that although we see many things throughout the day, the brain thinks that it sees everything, when clearly this may not be the case. So, as I tie this back into this topic of building the bridge, and more specifically, becoming the bridge, we are being asked now to live from this creative space. And I should say, we are being asked once more to live from the space, because humanity once knew this dimension directly. It was here, and it still is here. But we've forgotten and gotten lost. And so our future selves are summoning us back. A recursive call across time. And if you take a moment right now and close your eyes just for a moment with me, and take a breath and feel into your body, you may sense the resonance of this truth in you right now. Part of you already knows that there's something more that's wanting to land, and that our current models of understanding aren't sufficient. So, practically speaking, the space that I'm speaking of is not abstract. It lives between people. It is a field of coherence or incoherence, depending. It's this subtle lattice work of creation in morphogenetics. I always forget his name, of the scientist, Sheldrake. Sheldrake? I don't know. I'll have to look it up and put it in the comments. But he talks about the creative field. It already has the imprints in it. The possibilities already exist in it. And it holds all the unspoken emotion and thought transmitted through our senses. And this is beyond sight and sound for many. And I'm talking about the physical sight and sound, our senses. Because for sensitive ones like myself, and perhaps you, if you're listening, this is an undercurrent. There's an undercurrent. It's an intuition. It's a way of an unspoken way of identifying and understanding patterns woven in through the collective field. Some people refer to this as the Akash, and at times it can feel super maddening to perceive, to be the one who perceives these fields and these energetic currents, and to be able to perceive and understand the unspoken images and emotions that others are not either privy to, and so they deny them, or they have tuned out from their own expanse of their psychic nature, or they've forgotten how to use it, let's say. So it can be super frustrating, because this resonance has truths there that have been left unacknowledged. And so many of us are being asked to come into to help articulate this invisible lattice that's being restored into our consciousness. And after eons of neglect and denial, this matrix of resonance is being rewoven. It's harmonic net of coherence of creation that is returning, that is embodied, and it's allowing our collective psyche to come back online in a fuller spectrum of consciousness. And this, it includes our embodied physical nature. And in this way, it is a return to God. And I'm not using God in a religious sense. I'm using it in a reference to the design of this world. And I'm smiling because right as I said that, I heard thunder outside my window. And it's that deep boom of thunder that has been connected to the power of nature speaking as God, for example, through the elements. So I'm not using this word as in the rigid traditions or doctrines, but as an inclusive harmonic that is welcoming back one half of the equation of creation that has been excluded. This yin energy, or this feminine vector of creation, is the receptive principle that was exiled from Western reductionism and Christianity. She was turned into spirit with no body as the Holy Spirit, but she belongs, she's not an abstraction. She is the mode and medium of matter and creation in the body, in the sensory domain where we experience life, where the life force flows through us. And this reconstruction will not be without grief. Each soul on this planet, if they are planning on making this next evolutionary step with us, must reconcile the long history of rejection, the exile of desire itself, the suppression of life's natural currents moving through our body, all of the way it was clamped down, pushed down into the subconscious mind, which causes self-disconnect, creates blindness, and invisible shadow or unowned shadow. And the church was built on the renunciation of this energy. It severed her off from vitality while feeding on it, hiding the vulnerabilities of being in a body and what exactly that requires: food, shelter, mothering, care, love, being held, connection. And this great reconciliation, this harmonic rebalancing that I'm speaking about, is bringing her back into the fold of creation, to her rightful place. It is a balance between being receptive and expressive, masculine and feminine. There's the form and the field. It is a return to these universal principles such as beauty, justice, truth, freedom, and not as some unattainable ideal that we're trying to get to, but as a lived principle of embodied resonance, because that's the only way that they can actually become realized. So this is what is coming, my friends, this dawn of coherence, embodied coherence, the reconstruction of the matrix. It is a light of a new day, vibrating through the lattice of creation. And perhaps you can feel it as you hear these words. And so, what does this mean in regards to how we lead, how we show up in our power? And so, that's really how I'm seeing leadership at this time. Leadership is the ability to show up in one's power without reducing or removing another person's power. And so I'll speak from my own experience, as that's the context I have. But as you listen to my personal story, I invite you to use it as a lens for your own relationship to your power, to your ideas of leadership. What encourages you or challenges you from stepping inside of that power? So for me, it was this flip-flop between duality and, more specifically, when I function from or have functioned from a use of power in a limited to a world of duality, well, things are either this or that. I've noticed that I have two options. One is to manipulate, dominate, override, use force. There's the lightning, the thunder. To overpower other, to accommodate whatever my outcome or my vision is. And we live in that paradigm right now. And we actually submit to those forms of power right now because we've been taught that one, the outside authority, must know better than we do. We must do that in order to collaborate in a way that works. And that's a slippery slope, which I'll talk about in a minute. And the other side of the duality, when that doesn't work, of course, which it's bound not to, because being a strong arm leader takes a lot of energy. And it takes a lot of disconnect from self in order to do that. And that old model is no longer viable, because anything that asks us to disconnect from self is a type of psychic death and a misuse of power in actuality. And on the other side of that, when that didn't work, as resistance arises, and resistance is always bound to arise when one is using that form of power, because it could create fear and uncertainty. And on the other hand, some people really like it. It makes them feel secure and held like they were when they were a child by a authoritarian parent, for example, that they could trust, that they didn't have to worry about, even if it wasn't true, right? Even if it was just the illusion of authority that this parent had. But it allowed that child to relax into that. level of trust that their best interest, their needs would be met. And that happens most often. Um, but it also creates a rejection of other layers of our being. So it's a compromise. There's a price that has had to be paid for that model. And as I mentioned on the other side, what happens when um, the strong arm approach doesn't work? There is a surrender, there is a collapse, there is a resignation, there was, why bother? Who cares? Why should I try to invest my time and energy to convince people to be or act in a certain way? And both sides of this polarity are misinformed because collapse into inaction and resignation is just that. And to use strong arm tactics is not giving the people around us choice. And so, what is the missing ingredient? And for me, I have always been a visionary. I've often been able to see certain things that most people might not pay attention to or even notice. And that wasn't always welcomed in my family, mostly because the people around me didn't have access to it. And I didn't realize at the time, but it's taken all these years for this learning to finally for me to harvest this learning. And that's why I'm here today sharing it with you. For many years, I thought, because I was raised around mirrors of people that found my particular vision and style of communicating confusing. And I realize now that they were very concrete people, like salt of the earth people, which is awesome. But I realized that a lot of what I was speaking about and sharing generated fear in them. It generated fear because they didn't see how what I was sharing would ever be possible. And I let that shut me down over and over again. I didn't realize that what I was being asked to do was to walk people through their fear. I let their fear become my fear. And that informed my actions, my choices, and my words. And I like to use, or I was thinking about this chapter today, and I was thinking about narratives of leadership and leaders and the access of supernatural aliveness, the ownership of that always being projected out into the rare leader type as a cult of personality, for example, somebody to admire, somebody that we can admire that has traits that we don't have. When in actuality, the reason why we admire those traits is because we have them. We may not have developed them yet, but we have them. And so I think about the parting of the Red Sea and all of the people that Moses was charged with taking into liberation or freedom. And that it was enough. It wasn't enough just to part the Red Sea. He had to get all the people to follow him through, which was probably, I imagine, overcoming their fear, their physical fear, and for survival, for not dying as they walked through the waters. And the waters are usually symbolic of our emotion. And Moses' character in the story had a staff, and the staff was aligned. In a way, it becomes a symbol for the alignment or the coherence of the spirit, the heart, and the mind. And when that is aligned, you don't need to convince people to follow you or talk them into trusting you. It's in your essence, it's in your beingness. And when people feel that, it goes beyond anything that they could say, because it's a knowing. And so as we come upon this next phase of our shared collective evolution, we're being asked, as I said, to become the bridge. And this bridge includes that point of illumination that happens when the mind, the body, and the spirit is aligned. It is an embodied phenomenon. It is not a conceptual experience. It is a felt, embodied one. And we're being called to fully embody our humanity in a way that we haven't before. And that includes being able to be present with all that is in us. And the famous line, I believe it was by Carl Jung, or some people say it was actually the disciple Thomas, that which we are not able to accept within us becomes our fate out in the world. And this is the tenets of non-duality, which I've studied for many years because it's so potent as the revolution is happening within. And when this inner alignment comes and this illumination happens, which is connected to what they call or has been called self-realization. And I hate to use that word as well because it has a lot of historical contexts that people can get sidetracked and distracted with, because it's not a concept, it's an embodied reality. It's a frequency. And that frequency is what I'm speaking about when I say becoming the bridge. You become the way through the waters of the Red Sea. You become the way of truth through your being, not because what you're saying, but because of the energy that you're holding. And I think it's really interesting because I've tried to make this video at least 2 times before and have been unsuccessful for one reason or the next. And I think today was actually the perfect day. It was punctuated with the the thunder outside my window, almost like as an affirmation that this is the time for this message. And I wasn't ready before, you weren't ready before, and now we're ready. So yesterday was the full moon, uh, lunar eclipse in Pisces, right in opposition to Virgo. And this Virgo Pisces opposition has been the learning curve for humanity over the past 2,000 years or so. And this is exactly what we're moving out of. And it is a purification of the Pisces Virgo opposition, which is the martyr, Pisces, being the martyr, having to carry the weight of, for example, a savior, when actuality the message was we are all meant to be that bridge for ourselves, for each other. And that was the example, but it got appropriated, let's say, by the energy of the times that was not ready to share or to create a collective ownership of power. The levels of consciousness weren't available for that yet. And the other side of that is Virgo, which is the perfectionist, the over criticizing or self-analysis that creates paralysis. But when both of these poles are in order, and when I say in order, balanced, it becomes leadership as service, and that includes self. And as I heard a quote about a student who went in to see their teacher or their guru, and they asked, what's the difference between a Buddhist and a codependent? And the teacher said, the Buddhist includes themselves in the circle of compassion. And so that's what we're being asked to do, is to include ourselves in the empowerment as we empower others through our embodied experience. And that is what becoming the bridge means. And it's no easy feat. It is a constant devotion to the truth. And when I say truth, I mean the authenticity of one's heart, one's essence, in the service of realization, knowing that when I do that, when I am able to be authentic in a compassionate way, that I automatically free those around me to own their truth in that same way. And then the power becomes in service to the collective and the good of all. And I think that's where I'll leave it today. Thank you so much for stopping by to listen to this final chapter of the Building the Bridge series. And if you heard something today that touched your heart or inspired your spirit, I'd love to hear about it. I want to let you know that if you're local to Portland, that next Monday, the 15th of September, I will be holding the first somatic sensing circle at my home, and you're invited. You can check the link in the description of this video. I have a Facebook event link and also a meetup link. So check that out. And soon I will be posting my fall classes for the energetic toolbox, which is a collection of tools I'm going to be sharing with my students about how they can learn to ground their energy, um, practice energetic hygiene and what that is, and return to a level of joy and equanimity in our day-to-day lives through these energetic tools, allowing everyone around us to have their experience exactly the way it is without getting dragged into it, let's say, which is not always the easiest for us humans. So, and then I'll also be sharing another class um, called the Care Shop, which is a somatic. It is it's an opportunity to create your own somatic nervous system care plan for yourself, which offers the tools to do exactly what I was just talking about today in this message, in this transmission, that we need the energetic tools in order to heal and to befriend our own nervous systems in ways that many of us never learned how to do. We never received the tools. And so that's what I'm here for, is to share those with you. So keep your eyes peeled for those links, which I'll be sharing hopefully in a couple weeks. And until next time, please remember what a valuable treasure you are. And bye for now.